Chapter 2. Elevation at Death. There are different kinds of transcendentalists who are called yogis, hatha yogis, jnana yogis, jhana yogis, and bhakti yogis, and all of them are eligible to be transferred to the spiritual world. The word yoga means to link up, and the yoga systems are meant to enable us to link with the transcendental world. As mentioned in the previous chapter, originally we are all connected to the Supreme Lord, but now we have been affected by material contamination. The process is that we have to return to the spiritual world, and that process of linking up is called yoga. Another meaning of the word yoga is plus. At the present moment we are minus God, or minus the Supreme. When we add Krishna or God to our lives, this human form of life becomes perfect. At the time of death, we have to finish that process of perfection. During our lifetime, we have to practice the method of approaching that perfection, so that at the time of death, when we have to give up this material body, that perfection can be realized. Prayana kale manasa chalena Bhakcha yukto yoga balena chaiva Pruvoramajje pranam avesha samyak Satang barang burushang upaiti divyam. Quote, one who, at the time of death, fixes his life air between the eyebrows and in full devotion engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unquote, Bhagavad Gita 8:10. Just as a student studies a subject for 4 or 5 years and then takes his examination and receives a degree, similarly with the subject of life, if we practice during our lives for the examination at the time of death, and if we pass the examination, we are transferred to the spiritual world. Our whole life is examined at the time of death. Yang vapi smaran bhavang jajan chante kalevaram tang tam evaiti kunteya saratad bhava bhavitaha. Quote, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. Unquote, Bhagavad Gita 8:6. There is a Bengali proverb that says that whatever one does for perfection will be tested at the time of his death. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes what one should do when giving up the body. For the jnana yogi, meditator, Sri Krishna speaks the following verses. Yaraksharang veda vido vadanti vishanti yat yatayo vitaragaha Yarichanto brahmacharyang charanti tadte parang sangrahena pravakshe sarva dvarani sangyamya manohridi nirujacha murtnya dayat manaha pranam astito yogadharanam. Quote, persons learned in the Vedas who utter Omkara and who are great sages in the renounced order enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practices celibacy. I shall now explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements. Closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head, one establishes himself in yoga. Unquote, Bhagavad Gita 8, 11, and 12. In the yoga system, this process is called pratyahara, which means just the opposite. Although during life the eyes are engaged in seeing worldly beauty, at death one has to retract the senses from their objects and see the beauty within. Similarly, the ears are accustomed to hearing so many sounds in the world, but at the moment of death, one has to hear the transcendental Omkara from within. Ongitche kaksharang brahma vyaharan mammanusmaran yaha prayati chajandehang sayati paramangatim. Quote, after being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 8:13. In this way, all the senses have to be stopped in their external activities and concentrated on the form of Vishnumurti, the form of God. The mind is very turbulent, but it has to be fixed on the Lord in the heart. When the mind is fixed within the heart and the life air is transferred to the top of the head, one can attain perfection of yoga. At this point, the yogi determines where he is to go. In the material universe, there are innumerable planets, and beyond this universe, there is the spiritual universe. The yogis have information of these places from Vedic literatures. Just as one going to America can get some idea what the country is like by reading books, one can also have knowledge of the spiritual planets by reading Vedic literatures. The yogi knows all these descriptions, and he can transfer himself to any planet he likes, without the help of spaceships. Space travel by mechanical means is not the accepted process for elevation to other planets. Perhaps with a great deal of time, effort, and money, a few men may be able to reach other planets by material means, spaceships, spacesuits, etc. But this is a very cumbersome and impractical method. In any case, it is not possible to go beyond the material universe by mechanical means. The generally accepted method for transferal to higher planets is the practice of the meditational yoga system or jnana system. The bhakti yoga system, however, is not to be practiced for transferal to any material planet. For those who are servants of Krishna, the Supreme Lord, are not interested in any planet in this material world, because they know that on whatever planet one enters in the material sky, the four principles of birth, old age, disease, and death are present. On higher planets, the duration of life may be longer than on this earth, but death is there nonetheless. By material universe, we refer to those planets where birth, old age, disease, and death reside. And by spiritual universe, we refer to those planets where there is no birth, old age, disease, and death. Those who are intelligent do not try to elevate themselves to any planet within the material universe. If one tries to enter higher planets by mechanical means, instant death is assured, for the body cannot stand the radical changes in atmosphere. But if one attempts to go to higher planets by means of the yoga system, he will acquire a suitable body for entrance. We can see this demonstrated on this earth, for we know it is not possible for us to live in the sea, in a watery atmosphere, nor is it possible for aquatics to live on the earth. As we understand that even on this planet one has to have a particular type of body to live in a particular place, so a particular type of body is required for other planets. On the higher planets, bodies live much longer than on earth, for 6 months on earth is equal to 1 day on the higher planets. Thus the Vedas describe that those who live on higher planets live upward to 10,000 earth years. Yet despite such a long lifespan, death awaits everyone. Even if one lives 20,000 or 50,000 or even millions of years, in the material world the years are all counted, and death is there. How can we escape this subjugation by death? That is the lesson of Bhagavad Gita. Najayate mriyate va kadachin nayang buddha bhavita vana bhuyaha ajo nichaha shasvato yang purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Quote, for the soul there is never birth nor death, nor, once having been, does he ever cease to be. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, undying, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 2:20. We are spirit soul, and as such we are eternal. Why then should we subject ourselves to birth and death? One who asks this question is to be considered intelligent. Those who are Krishna conscious are very intelligent because they are not interested in gaining entrance to any planet where there is death. They will reject a long duration of life in order to attain a body like God's. Isvaraha Paramaha Krishnaha Satchidananda Vigraha. Brahma Samhita 5.1. Sat means eternal, Chit means full of knowledge, and Ananda means full of pleasure. Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure. If we transfer ourselves from this body into the spiritual world, either to Krishna Loka, Krishna's planet, or any other spiritual planet, we will receive a similar Satchidananda body. Thus the aim of those who are in Krishna consciousness is different from those who are trying to promote themselves to higher planets within this material world. The self, or soul, of the individual is a minute spiritual spark. The perfection of yoga lies in the transferal of this spiritual spark to the top of the head. Having attained this, the yogi can transfer himself to any planet in the material world, according to his desire. If the yogi is curious to know what the moon is like, he can transfer himself there. Or if he is interested in higher planets, he can transfer himself there, just as travelers go to New York, Canada, or other cities on the earth. Wherever one goes on earth, he finds the same visa and customs systems operating, and on all the material planets, one can similarly see the principles of birth, old age, disease, and death operating. Ong Iche Kaksharang Brahma. At the point of death, the yogi can pronounce Om, Omkara, the concise form of transcendental sound vibration. If the yogi can vibrate this sound and at the same time remember Krishna or Vishnu, Mam Anusmaran, he attains the highest goal. It is the process of yoga to concentrate the mind on Vishnu. The impersonalists imagine some form of the Supreme Lord. But the personalists do not imagine this. They actually see. Whether one imagines him or actually sees him, one has to concentrate his mind on the personal form of Krishna. Ananya Chetaha Satatang Yomang Smarati Nityashaha Tasyahang Sulabaha Partha Nityayuktasya Yoginaha. Quote, for one who remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. Unquote, Bhagavad Gita 8:14. Those who are satisfied with temporary life, temporary pleasure, and temporary facilities are not to be considered intelligent, at least not according to Bhagavad Gita. According to the Gita, one whose brain substance is very small is interested in temporary things. We are eternal, so why should we be interested in temporary things? No one wants a non-permanent situation. If we are living in an apartment and the landlord asks us to vacate, we are sorry. But we are not sorry if we move into a better apartment. It is our nature, because we are permanent to want permanent residence. We don't wish to die, because in actuality we are permanent. They cannot make any machine that will check death, old age, or disease. We can manufacture something that will accelerate death, but nothing that will stop death. Those who are intelligent, however, are not concerned with the fourfold miseries of material life, but with elevation to the spiritual planets. One who is continuously in trance, Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha, does not divert his attention to anything else. He is always situated in trance. His mind is always filled with the thought of Krishna, without deviation. Ananya Chetaha Satatam. Satatam refers to anywhere and any time. In India I lived in Vrindavan, and now I am in America. But this does not mean that I am out of Vrindavan, because if I think of Krishna always, then I'm always in Vrindavan, regardless of the material designation. Krishna consciousness means that one always lives with Krishna on that spiritual planet, Goloka Vrindavan, and that one is simply waiting to give up this material body. Smarati Nityashaha means continuously remembering, and for one who is continuously remembering Krishna, the Lord becomes Tashyahang Sulabhaha, easily purchased. Krishna himself says that he is easily purchased by this Bhakti Yoga process. Then why should we take to any other process? We can chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, 24 hours daily. There are no rules and regulations. One can chant in the street, in the subway, or at his home or office. There is no tax and no expense. So why not take to it?